This is Michael Meager. I've had these pictures printed looking at this boy for about a month here on the desk, and I have not wanted to do this. It choked me up today thinking about it. Something happened that made me want to make this video. So this is Steven. Steven's his stepdad, okay? About a month ago, January 20th, 2025, not but 15 minutes from where I live in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, 8-year-old Michael is up, and Steven is trying to be cool. Steven said his words. Steven says, I want to be cool and exciting. So he's been drinking, retrieves a stun gun and a pistol, and he pulls the magazine out and he points the pistol at this sweet, beautiful 8-year-old boy. Depresses the trigger, and the firearm worked as its engineers designed it to. It discharged around into this sweet little boy's neck, ending his life. I wanted to do a video on this because, one, I wanted to make sure that we know who this guy was. Right here, this kid, Michael Meager, a sweet kid that did not deserve that. And I want to make sure that we know who Mr. Merkel was, who is now in custody awaiting his trial. Did he do it out of hatred? Was it like a homicidal thing where he wanted to kill this kid? No, it was just complete idiocy and stupidity. Do you think this dude's ever going to have a night in his life that's fun again? Is he ever going to hang out with his buddies having a beer and forget what he did? Is he ever going to sit with this boy's mom and have a nice Christmas party? Party over. The party is over for that family because of one fractional stupid decision. Now, you could be listening to this and you could go, Mick, this guy's an idiot. I would never do this. Yeah, accidents happen. Highly skilled aircraft pilots, like we just saw, crash. Highly skilled aircraft mechanics forget to tighten something correctly. Highly skilled people make mistakes. This one is really out there, and it's obtuse, and you can really see how you could not have had this happen, right? Don't get a gun out drinking 2 o'clock in the morning and point it at a little kid, of course. I'm talking to a friend today, and this is what prompted me to come down here and make this discussion, have this discussion. He's at a range. I'm not going to drop names, but he's at a range where there's some training going on, indoor range. They've got a glass viewing window so that people outside can watch the training. And this guy that I'm talking about is a very dear friend of mine. He instructs with me. He is a lifetime combatives guy. He was a cop. He knows what he's doing with guns. I would have him teach my kids, right? That's like my level of trust in this man's opinion. In fact, he was a teacher, mentor, is a teacher, mentor of mine. He's viewing this, and he was prompted to look at what's happening by a friend of his who's also an equally skilled dude. So there's something happening where there's people sitting, kind of mimicking being in a vehicle, and then they draw guns and they bail off their chairs, mimicking bailing out of a vehicle, and they're shooting targets, and then they're turning and flagging everybody on the range and the people off the range through the viewing window. Muzzles everywhere, mayhem, shit that should not be allowed. The guy that's instructing the class sees these dudes out viewing and comes out there and he's like, hey, you guys should sign up. Like, this is the real deal. And they're like, yeah, we're good. Thanks. Because it was, of course, not something that they were interested in, pointing guns at each other, because it's idiotic. That prompted me to remember a story. I was sent a video by a young girl last year. She was kind of looking for some advice, like, is this thing I'm about to show you normal? And I'm like, well, I don't know, send it. She's new to guns. She's invited to a class because she's got a bit of a social media following, and so people wanted her there, so she'd post pictures and it would help sell class spots. She's brand new to shooting, okay? Like brand new, like, hey, this is a gun, the bullet comes out there, that's a sight, like brand new. The video that she sent me was being filmed by somebody on the range, and it was her fighting with a real firearm, unaltered, a real gun, just empty, with another person. So they're physically grappling. Mind that this girl's got no firearms experience, no grappling experience, and she's day one of this 2-day class. Day one, she's grappling for a gun, and then the exercise was called over when one of the two combatants retrieved the gun or like fought for it, did a tap rack, pressed the gun out at the other training partner and pressed the trigger. So again, two humans, untrained, fighting. Of course, you don't know anything till you know it. I mean, why not use a blue gun? Why not use a training gun, a T gun? We come back to that. The next part of that training had them taking their guns, unloading them, and pointing their unloaded, real, totally functioning gun. And this is just a blue gun, just a hunk of plastic. It's not a firearm of any way, any kind. They pointed it at the person's ear and chest. So it was like if you were my training partner, you'd point your gun at me, press the trigger, I'd point my gun at you, press the trigger. And the idea was that they're like inoculating themselves, subjecting themselves to this sight picture with a real person so that the next time that they have to do it for real, they've seen it. Could you do that with a blue gun? Could you do that with visualization? Now you may see like, I could understand that. Well, who doesn't do that? The Army's Special Mission Unit, the Navy's Special Mission Unit, they don't do that. Well, Mick, how do you know? Well, because I have friends that come from the highest echelons of the Army Special Mission Unit and the highest echelons of the Navy Special Mission Unit. Hard pause on that. Those guys, when they learn shooting techniques, how to grip a pistol, a lot of them go to a place called Mid-South, which is run by a guy named John Shaw, or was. His son runs it now. John was a competitive shooter, one of the best that there was in the 80s and early 90s. So competitive shooters teaching the high-level military guys, okay? Those guys are not pointing real guns at each other. In fact, that's the stuff that gets you kicked off the team. I don't just know this because I read it. I didn't serve in those places. That's not what I'm saying. Some of these guys work with me. Some of them have worked for me. I've worked with and for some of these guys. Some of them are mentors of mine. These are people I know personally, guys that have run some of those training programs. They don't do it. They're not pointing firearms at each other to learn things. So let's switch gears a little bit. Second Amendment. This is the Second Amendment primer by author Les Adams. I love this book. I've got this one all marked up for notes and stuff. I asked a group of students in Florida last week, can anybody say the Second Amendment? Can you say it right now before I do? Pause the video and say it if you can. All right, if you did it, perfect. If not, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, that's it, Mick. I don't need to hear nothing else. Shall not be infringed. Well-regulated. Now, slow your roll there, Johnny Rocket. Well-regulated in the context of the 18th century, the 1700s, meant something. It didn't mean red tape. It didn't mean licensing schemes. It didn't mean paperwork. It meant disciplined, ready, capable, trained. It meant I'm good to go, boss. I know what you need me to do. It meant that when the governor or the sheriff or the mayor called, you and your neighbors could protect the homestead. You could protect the town. You could protect your state because you were drilling. You were practicing. In fact, let's take a look at what founder Richard Henry Lee, he wrote under the pseudonym The Federal Farmer. So, anti-federalist, he wrote, to preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms and to be taught alike, especially young, how to use them. He didn't say we should just own them. He said they should be taught when they're young how to use them. That doesn't just mean load it and shoot it. They were talking about fighting. And how do we know this? This book is full of these people's writings. A militia, when properly formed, are in fact the people themselves. And they render regular troops in great measure unnecessary. The power to form and arm the militia, to appoint their officers, and to command their services are very important, nor ought they in a confederated republic to be lodged solely in any one member of the government. So, in this paragraph, Richard Henry Lee was talking about people should be armed. There should be local militias. And I'm not arguing this discussion for militias. I'm just trying to paint a picture here. He went on to say The militia shall always be kept well organized, armed, and disciplined, and include, according to the past and general usage of the states, all men capable of bearing arms, that all regulations tending to render this general militia useless and defenseless by establishing selected corps of militia or distinct bodies of military men not having permanent interest and attachments in the community is to be avoided. Literally, he just said the men of a town, of a community, of a state need to be trained up, ready to go, organized. That way, all the crap that goes on to try to suppress that, to create big standing armies, should be avoided. In the context, in the construct of the 18th century, that's what it meant. For self-protection. Self-protection. Here's another one. The principal reason that the intent of the framers of the Second Amendment is misunderstood in some quarters today is the failure to appreciate how vitally important to them was the right to possess arms, not only for the service in the militia, but for self-protection. So we know this. That's why all of us have concealed carry or open carry. I don't care about that, how you carry, but we understand this stuff. He goes deeper. He looks at Blackstone. Who was Blackstone? Look up Blackstone. Blackstone, English scholar, where much of our law comes from. Blackstone, William Blackstone, said here, the right of bearing arms as being for self-preservation and defense, and self-defense as being the primary law of nature, which cannot be taken away by the law of society. The natural right of resistance and self-preservation when the sanctions of society and laws are found insufficient to restrain the violence of suppression. He's painting a picture here of why we needed the firearms. All of it in our Second Amendment wrapped around this idea of well-regulated. Again, not regulated in the context of laws or paperwork, but in being trained. There is no firearms trainer worth his salt that will have you pointing guns at each other. The number one rule, never point the firearm at anything that you are not willing to shoot, to kill, destroy. i.e., if you don't want a hole in it, don't point it at it. That said, somebody could say, well, I see cops do it all the time. Yes, they're willing to make a hole should the person need a hole made in them. If you are around people that do not respect this greatest of rights, this right that allows us the most blessed ability to protect ourselves and our families, get away from them. It's too easy to hurt somebody. Do not train with people that will not adhere and listen to reason about trigger finger. When I'm on the line and I'm telling somebody over and over again to get their finger off the trigger and they tell me I know or I wasn't, I will tell them once or twice. If they're pointing the gun at somebody, that's another discussion altogether. But if the firearm's pointed in a safe direction and they're not exhibiting perfect trigger finger discipline, and this is in a learning environment, if they give me an attitude like I know or it's okay or get off my back, that's when their time training is done. These are non-negotiables. You, as a free-thinking member of the greatest society that the world has ever known, created on the backs of these men like Lee and Jefferson and the others, they understood that this right needed to be connected to the responsibility of regulation in its self-regulation. Nobody can make you do it. Nobody can make you do the push-ups. Nobody can make you practice and be disciplined. Discipline can't be forced upon you. That's a prison sentence. The dude that's got the six-pack abs, you can't make somebody have a six-pack abs. Yes, you could starve somebody, but the muscle goes away, right? That's not the point. Discipline is a self-imposed trait. Owning it's cool, man. Training with it's cool. But honor this kid who did not need to die. Honor the work of these founders who literally signed their life to a sacred document so that we could sit here and argue over a red dot or irons or which guru Instagram instructor's better. Who gives a shit? You choose to walk the path of discipline. You choose to walk the path of being well armed so that if nature, if your community, if your neighbor, if your wife or kids, or if you alone are called to need to defend life, you're ready, man. That opponent, be it a neighboring army, some bad guys, some thugs, a horde of Mongols, or some people breaking into your house, make it so that they know that they chose poorly. Make it so that they know that they chose poorly really quickly. This is Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Demand excellence when it comes to the safety with firearms and the training with them. Only you control the muzzle of your pistol.